Many of us believe that the major transformations that have occurred in this universe, including great ideas, impressive inventions, and the progress and development of civilizations, cultures and nations, are only a result of political development in some systems, or it is a natural result of wars generated by this or that nation. But when a person thinks some more about these major transformations, it becomes clear that the real reason behind them is the total change in the ideas of those nations. And this is what the book The Psychology of Socialism by the French philosopher and historian Gustave Le Bon seeks to clarify. It emphasizes that it is not the real major political upheavals that amazes researchers because of their greatness and violence, but rather the real and worthy revolution that leads to a change in the state of civil nations takes place in ideas, perceptions, and beliefs. The Psychology of Socialism by Gustave Le Bon. Le Bon emphasizes that the communities have a collective spirit and are characterized by many characteristics that distinguish them from personal ones. Perhaps the most important characteristic of these communities is their ability to be impulsive, volatile and angry. The community or the public is driven by the natural influences that affect them. So the community is merciful or cruel, but it is always strong, and it is not discouraged by self-interest, even the self-preservation itself. The community is also unstable, and that is why it suddenly moves from the worst of deeds to the greatest deeds of mercy and generosity. So it's very easy for the community to be the perpetrator and the victim too. The community is also characterized by the speed of believing things and news. This explains the creation of stories and rumors that spread rapidly among people, because the community thinks by means of imaginations, and every imagination leads to others that have no reasonable relationship between them. Whatever the community's emotions are, whether good or bad, they have two essential characteristics, extremely simple, and greatly exaggerated. Here, the individual within the community loses the ability of precise distinction, as he sees things in their entirety, and does not know the necessity of moving from one phase to another. What increases the community's exaggerated emotions is that every feeling spreads with the factor of influence and affection, and the agreement of everyone on accepting it greatly increases its strength. Bit to remember, communities have a collective spirit characterized by many characteristics that distinguish them from personal and individual characteristics. It must be emphasized here that the ideas that are spread within the communities, whatever their nature, cannot prevail unless they are put in the form of absolute and simple rules in order to appear in the best form, which is the necessary condition to take possession of their minds. And there are no mental links of similarity or coherence between these portrayed ideas, so some of them can replace each other, and that is the reason why contradictory ideas are rapidly spread among communities. And according to the circumstances, the community is under the influence of one of these ideas that are collected in its imagination, and it comes up with the most contradictory and conflicting actions. Some may think that the community can be subject to mental links, and this is what Le Bon denied, because the rationality of communities is a combination of contradictory things that have no connection or links between them except outwardly. And the evidence which are given by those who knew how to lead these communities are all of this kind, because they are the kind of evidences that affects them, unlike the logical and rational evidence. Perhaps the irrationality within the communities is what makes imagination one of its main characteristics. As communities are like humans that are not sensible in the intensity of imagination and in always doing this action, and in their ability to be highly affected, so the image that they see of a person or an accident affects them as if it were the reality itself. Bit to remember, the ideas of the communities have no connections between them, therefore, they deny everything that makes sense and always tend to imagine. Often the leaders of the communities are not from scholars or resource persons, but rather they are courageous and energetic people, and their main characteristic is that they have little insight, reflection and patience. Because reflection and contemplation often lead to doubt, and then to restlessness, stagnation and laziness. And as a number of studies conducted, they are also characterized by the fact that they suffer from neurological diseases and their repercussions, or suffer from disorders at the level of their mental powers, so they are close to madness than to sanity and insight. The evidence for this is that if they believe in something, even if this belief is wrong, then neither argument nor evidence can stop them from continuing in believing in it, regardless of the consequences. Also, neither contempt or persecution affect them, nor belittling their social, intellectual and psychological status. Rather, it increases their obsession and stubbornness. In order to achieve their goals, community leaders seek a number of ways to convince their audience, including emphasis, which is the most important factor for spreading thought in the hearts and minds of communities. Whenever it is simple and devoid of reason and evidence, and the more concise and abstract the emphasis is, the greater the impact it has. Influence also has a power that no other power can defeat it, and every power that prevailed, whether it was the power of ideas or men, we find that the influence is the reason for its establishment and sovereignty. Influence is the power of a man, deed, or thought that controls the minds, and that power disables the ability of criticism and fills the mind with amazement and respect. Bit to remember, community leaders are the masterminds, so they use various ways to convince their audience. Le Bon divides the types of communities into two main parts: communities with different elements, and communities with a combination of elements. In order to understand each one separately, we can say that there are main factors with which it is easy to distinguish the communities with different elements, as for example, the community that is composed of English individuals differ greatly from the community that is composed of individuals that are a mixture of Russians, French, and Spanish. This difference is often caused by mental heredity in how we feel and look at things. As for the communities with a combination of elements, they are divided into parties, sects, and classes, and they are composed of individuals who differ in education, craft, and the environment sometimes, and they have nothing that unites them except their belief, and of this type are political parties and religious parties. The sects are the finest part of these communities, and they consist of individuals united in craft. They are similar in their education and environment, such as the community of soldiers and the community of spiritual leaders. The classes are those whose members come from different origins, and what unites them is the benefits and similarities in the state of living and education, such as the middle class in the nation and the class of farmers. And so on. Bit to remember, there are two types of communities: communities with different elements, and communities with a combination of elements.